Hello and welcome back to another YouTube Live. My name is Lisa. I am your host, and again, as mentioned, I am in a different spot than where I was last week. Last week, I was still in Bogota in Colombia, and due to some visa things, I had to pack my stuff up and move somewhere else. I thought about going to Mexico. I thought about going to Uruguay or to Panama, but I landed on Bolivia. I am now in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, which is a wonderful city in the Amazon, actually, a really up and coming space. In case anybody's interested, I'm going to share my view with you. So this is my lovely apartment. It's a bit of an overcast day today, but generally speaking, I'm really pleased with the apartment here. And although some of the paintings, like this one, excuse me, are a little bit questionable, generally speaking, I'm very happy with my selection of my Airbnb home here. If you ever have any questions on like how I go about selecting my locations, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I have been a digital nomad for almost 6 years. I think I have some ins and outs to share, but that's not the topic of today's discussion. I'm going to see if I can find a slightly better setup. Anyway, just going to leave it. But yeah, today we are talking about over and underrated things as they pertain to nutrition. Last week I did this for training. We talked about things like lifting straps and belts, like pre-workouts and so on. And today I am talking about all things nutrition as they pertain to over and underrated things. Before I get into it though, if you haven't downloaded your free Happy Healthy Holiday guide yet, please let me know if you would like me to send it to you. All the strategies for how to navigate Christmas, Thanksgiving, and so on without gaining the extra weight, without feeling guilty afterwards, while still being present, enjoying in moderation, but just learning how to navigate them. But yes, so we have that freebie. That's our latest freebie. You can find that on the website. I will drop the handle on how to download it just in the comments below. And of course, we are also always open for coaching. Myself, I do have some coaching spots available, as well as Tammy, Allison, and Laura. So please let us know if we can help you in any way, shape, or form. So now let's talk about nutrition-related over or underrated things. The first one is fasting. I actually think fasting is absolutely overrated. I mean, it has kind of been around forever, whether consciously or unconsciously. You know, people have sometimes gone through periods of times where they just didn't have any food. So that was more like a famine rather than fasting. And then going into more religious reasons, people started fasting, like in the Bible or in the Quran and so on. Everywhere they mention fasting, but mostly for the sense of it lets us connect to other things much better. You are able to focus on your work better. You are able to focus on God, who is meant to be above all, better. You are able to focus just on your relationships or the world around you better, as opposed to being so preoccupied with, oh, well, what am I going to eat next all the time? And of course, also without having the digestive system preoccupied with just or being busy with digesting food. So it's been around for a long time, but I feel like even just in the last few years, when we talk about fasting, most people think of intermittent fasting, and that has really just become popular because of research studies where they are confined to certain hours in a research lab, and because of that, they're sort of like, okay, 16 hours of no eating, 8 hours of eating, and we can observe the people, or we can take some markers and so on. And I mean, people have been fasting for a long time, also for forms of weight loss, even centuries ago in various notebooks or medicine handbooks. It was always like, oh, healing fasting or fasting to heal. That's something people should be doing on a regular basis or frequently. So yes, of course, I'm not negating that fasting can be positive, can have some positive effects. But what I'm saying is, I think it's overrated. I think we're talking about it too much, and everybody should just find the rhythm at which they enjoy eating. If, of course, fasting helps you to keep your calorie window small, if, of course, fasting helps you to sleep better, to feel lighter, to feel good in your workout, to think more clearly throughout work, by all means, go ahead and implement some fasting here and there, but also be aware that sometimes it can impede your ability to consume all your protein, to even just reach your calories, to perform well in the gym, to get the most out of your performance in there, as opposed to recovering optimally, or if you are not eating anything beforehand or haven't eaten anything for a long period of time beforehand, it might even impact your hormones on a negative negative way. So I truly think fasting is overrated, even if I might have even practiced it on my own unintentionally for some time. And I have certainly also tried intermittent fasting when it became popular like 8-9 years ago. At least that's when I gave it a go. And I really, really didn't feel that well or perform that well with it. So just my stance on on fasting in general, not just intermittent fasting. Now, another a thing that I think is actually underrated is the satiety index. So looking at how satiating are certain foods. For example, what is more satiating? 200 calories from white rice or 200 calories from potatoes? What is more satiating? 200 calories from salmon or 200 calories from tilapia. So taking a look at that can be really helpful if you're in a dieting phase and you're struggling with hunger, because it might allow you to swap the same amount of calories for a different type of food, which is just going to keep you full for longer. So, for example, for me personally, potatoes are much more satiating than white rice. And the satiety index or some studies back that up. But of course, if you're like, oh, I love rice though, and it gives me that much more of an enjoyment, like go ahead and eat the rice. Just be more aware that there are other foods that physiologically speaking could help fill you up more. So each person has to weigh that for themselves. What's more important to me, the enjoyment that I get from that candy, and having to have it in a small quantity, or do I prefer something in a larger quantity that fills me up a bit more but doesn't taste as nice as perhaps popcorn or so. So I think the satiety index is really something we're not utilizing to the best of our abilities or to get the most out of it, really. So I encourage people to look it up. I'm also going to drop that in the show notes. Other things that have a really high satiety index would be oats, egg whites, chicken, of course, all kinds of vegetables. Yeah, so I'm going to drop that in the show notes for sure. So the next thing, which I think is overrated, is getting, or that whole notion of, hey, you have to have a ton of variety in your diet. Yes, we don't just want to eat the same thing all the time, particularly for gut health. It has become a little bit more well known that variety is beneficial, like having a broader gut microbiome or just consuming more diverse bacteria. But what I will say is that often people try to overcomplicate things because of that reason, because they feel like they need to have that variety and constantly mixing it up. And that makes it take a lot longer when logging your food. That makes it a lot more or requires a lot more brain function when you go to the supermarket, because you don't just grab your 7 things that you know work well for you or that you know that you enjoy. You constantly reevaluate, oh, should I perhaps have this instead of that, or should I try something new here and there, should I try this new recipe? But then realizing that, hey, if you keep things more the same for longer or more often, let's just say like you eat the same thing Monday through Friday, and then you have more variety on the weekends, or you eat the same things for breakfast, lunch, and your snacks, and then you mix it more up for your dinners. That could work really well long term for a lot of people without overcomplicating it. If we're constantly thinking, what do I crave for breakfast, what do I crave for lunch, what do I crave for my snacks, what do I crave for dinner. That's a lot of decision making, a lot of planning and logging, and just constantly reevaluating, thinking power, brain power, that you could be spending so much more wisely on other things. So that was the next overrated thing: variety across the week. Something that I think is really underrated is practicing maintenance, so staying at your maintenance calories and practicing consistency. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the point of too much variation. We constantly want to chase a number, perhaps on the scale, or think I don't feel comfortable just seeing the same number on the scale all the time. I'm so used to it either going up or going down or so that's kind of something that we sometimes need to learn to sit with. And with that comes simply practicing consistency. Oftentimes also clients want to stop coaching because they're like, well, I've reached my goal here. I don't feel like I don't really need a coach. Well, oftentimes many people, especially if they're kind of like all or nothing, if they don't feel motivated right now, they could really, really benefit from a coach, even in or specifically in a maintenance phase, especially to get more consistent with their things, even if it feels like she's not giving me any new numbers. I don't feel like I have that much to report from week to week. So why am I even coaching? But it is exactly that, like having someone there in your camp, having someone who can potentially say like, hey, you've kind of veered a little bit too far off track, come back to your consistency. It can be really, really helpful. So I don't think that people appreciate or consciously practice maintenance phases often enough. They, generally speaking, are either in a diet or gain weight intentionally or unintentionally, and really don't feel that comfortable or like they're even going anywhere or achieving anything when they're just at maintenance or practicing consistency. For most people, it just looks like, oh, I'm not doing anything. And so whenever we're not in a cut or whenever we're not in a gaining phase, our mindset should be, I'm practicing consistency, I'm practicing maintenance, as opposed to I'm not doing anything and just kind of like floating around. That's when we will, because of our intuition or just the way that life is set up, that is when we will most of the time drift off too much in the other direction again, so gaining weight back. Or some people that come more from a restrictive mindset will just probably naturally tend to undereat more. So practicing maintenance, practicing consistency, really, really underrated in my opinion. The next one that I have for overrated is all products that just simply say organic or gluten-free or healthy or whatever. Not saying that there's no benefit to purchasing some products organically, or by all means, if you are celiac or even gluten sensitive, you are definitely benefiting from purchasing gluten-free products, or even people that have PCOS or other conditions might benefit from a gluten-free diet. So I'm certainly not bashing a gluten-free diet. I'm just saying that often people think just because it is gluten-free, it's quote unquote healthier, or just because it's organic, it's quote unquote healthier. If it's an organic donut, it's still going to have sugar and some oils and going to be rather processed and probably dense in calories, as opposed to an apple, just a conventional apple that might not be organic. So I always refer people to the Environmental Working Group's list of Clean 15 or Dirty Dozen. So that's essentially a list that they have put together with the 12 things that are usually most heavily laden with pesticides, meaning it is absolutely worth purchasing those organically if you want to minimize that pesticide exposure, particularly if you have hormone issues, if you're trying to conceive, if you're just overall trying to balance out your hormones more like in perimenopause or menopause. Um, and they also have a list of the Clean 15, so 15 products you really don't need to purchase organically. Yes, I do think that in many instances, like getting organic meat or fish or getting organic coffee, there is definitely benefit to that. But again, just because something says organic chocolate, organic sugar, organic whatever does not necessarily mean it's healthier. And I think that many people don't know that or don't internalize that, and therefore they spend a lot of money unnecessarily that could be spent on other things when we're thinking about health things, or even just when they're trying to lose weight. And sometimes they're actually even like, even if you have the same product, let's just say you have regular ice cream and you have organic ice cream, sometimes the organic things are actually even higher in calories than the regular ones. But yeah, anyway, next thing, underrated. I think having set meal times is actually kind of underrated. Why? Well, I mean, technically it doesn't really matter. I don't mean for specifically for that it's going to burn more fat or that it's going to help you lose weight quicker. I mean more that we're priming our body and mind to be hungry at a certain time. So that means when you know it's not your set meal time, you should be doing other stuff. You shouldn't be focusing on food so much. You should be getting your work done. You should be as constantly contemplating, I'm a little bit hungry. I could go and get something. Should I? Oh, no, I shouldn't. Should I? I'm going to start writing this email. And you start writing this email and you're like, maybe I should go. But no, so if you have set meal times, well, it's only 10 o'clock or 10:30. I shouldn't really be hungry. I'm just going to have some more water. And I know it's just boredom, want to eat type of hunger. I'm going to distract myself and eat when it's actual lunchtime, right? So if you have set meal times, you're priming your body and your mind to want to eat at that specific time. Yeah, of course, we can be a little bit flexible with that, like half an hour or an hour or so, plus minus. But just generally speaking, I do think it can be really helpful, especially also in a dieting phase where you're definitely battling hunger on a regular basis. So just knowing, hey, my next meal is coming up at this time, I'm going to distract myself until that time with other things, it could be really helpful in my opinion. So then we have two more things, overrated, and that's kind of going hand in hand with the organic versus and gluten-free one. And that's just generally superfoods or like weight loss supplements. So anything that says like, oh, it's a superfood, this is like a mixture of quinoa and amaranth and some other grains that you can't even pronounce, and it costs like 5 times the amount that just the regular quinoa does, I would just be wary of that. Like, where and how do you really want to spend your money? Same with weight loss supplements, like thinking about fat burner, blah, blah. Most of the time, it just has a really high caffeine or taurine content. So might be thinking, wouldn't it be better you're just drinking a really good quality coffee and spending that extra money on an even better quality omega-3 or adaptogen or a vitamin D or some supplements that are actually really worth taking, proven scientifically worth taking, and also like, yeah, just more beneficial in supporting your weight loss through the pathway of hormones. So I don't like the term superfoods. I think it is overrated. Superfood bowl, superfood blah blah, like literally on anything. Doesn't mean that it's bad, but just it shouldn't just be a permission to eat as much of that as you would like. So I would always look at the ingredients and at the nutrition panel as well. Then the last thing that I have here, which I think is underrated, is actually cruciferous vegetables. I mean, vegetables full stop, but cruciferous vegetables, in particular green vegetables, I could put on that list as well. But cruciferous vegetables, especially if if we consume them regularly, they really, really help the detox process. So they support our liver, the organ that helps our body detox on a daily basis. So we don't need to be doing any fancy detox diets or detox teas or blah, whatever it might be. We literally just need to support our liver as best as possible. And some of the things that we can do to do that is of course, minimizing stress and any kind of like environmental toxins as well. So going back to the organic point, or just the hormone balancing things that I mentioned earlier. But another thing we can do is consuming cruciferous vegetables on a regular basis. I usually recommend at least 100 grams of broccoli or so per day. This is really going to depend on your digestive tolerability as well. Some people don't do so well with cruciferous vegetables, although I would argue that in many cases, it comes down to the right preparation and consuming them at the right time of the day. Because if you consume them raw, it is very different for your digestive system than if you consume them cooked, not overcooked, but cooked. And also, it is very different if you consume that at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. in a large dinner, or if you consume them midday and giving your body plenty of time and some movement afterwards to digest them. A little quote unquote hack is that if you add some mustard seeds to your broccoli, you're actually 3 or 4xing the amount of the sulforaphane that your body absorbs, and it's the sulforaphane that helps the digestive or the detoxification process. So I highly recommend consuming cruciferous vegetables on a daily basis. I think they are underrated. So other cruciferous vegetables would be things like cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, all of those. But yes, of course, any kind of vegetables, in my opinion, underrated, even if it's things like spinach. And I mean, along the lines of like other foods that are underrated, not necessarily in the vegetable compartment, but like something like eggs, really underrated, super cheap, so high in micronutrients. Yes, it's not like packed with protein if you have a whole egg, but like if you mix whole eggs with egg whites, you can implement a ton of egg whites in your diet. The egg whites, granted, don't have as much nutritional value as the yolk, with its choline, with its vitamin E, and so on. But yeah, the combination is what makes it so great, and I think they are underrated, as well as things like potatoes have a ton of potassium in them, or other more traditional fruit like bananas or apples or so. Sometimes I think we're getting almost a little bit too exotic in our thinking, just because something is new. Once again, doesn't mean that it's necessarily better than something that's old and proven. But yeah, so that is my list of things that I think are over or underrated as they pertain to nutrition. Once again, if you haven't grabbed your Happy Healthy Holiday Handbook yet, take a look in the show notes and just download your copy there. I'd love to send it to you to help you navigate those next few weeks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope next time my sort of voice doesn't break up and I have a better setup. But yeah, thank you for coming on here. And in next week's chat, I'm going to talk about where are we? How to stop self-sabotage, which I think also comes in quite timely before Thanksgiving and so on. So anyway, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.